Hey, church, welcome back to Zoom Chats with Marc. If you don't know, I'm Marc, so you're stuck with me for Zoom Chats. So far, we've had some great conversations, one with Pastor Brandon Sweh, all about the worship ministry at Southside. We had another interview this past weekend with Aaron and Sarah Taylor, all about their embryo adoption story. Last week was Infertility Week, and I know a lot of people are affected by infertility. So I encourage you that if you do struggle with infertility or want to know more about it, I encourage you to go back and listen to that episode because it was a really, really fun time. But today for Zoom Chats with Marc, we're going to take a bit of a different spin. Obviously, you guys can see my screen. You can see that there's a dude on the other side that doesn't go to our church, but you've seen him at our church quite a bit of times. We got Pastor Sweh. He's the lead pastor of the After Church, which is one of our sister churches here in Michiana. Represent, there it is, as well as the Baptist Collegiate minister for Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame, God Country Notre Dame, as well as IUSB. A lot of you guys mainly know Sweh because he's the one who preached at my ordination service years ago. He's preached multiple times since then. But I know a lot of you guys don't know exactly the backstory of Sweh and exactly what he does and how we as a church already support him. But what can we as a church do to even support him even more? So, Sweh, I'm excited you're here, my dude.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me as a guest. And hello to all of my friends at Southside. I am honored to be called a friend of Southside. I have made the joke in the past that because I've been there preaching so many times, that I think my name should be in the bulletin with sometimes Sweh under staff.
Sometimes Sweh.
Yeah, you might want to think about that.
I mean, Stephanie, let's do it. Just put
lead pastor Scott Smith, worship pastor Brandon Sweh, sometimes pastor Sweh Velilla. You know, it's up to you guys.
But okay, so some people were asking this though. Okay, so I'm just going to ask the question: where the heck did Sweh come from? Because ain't nobody actually named Sweh. Well, okay, maybe millennials would be naming their baby Sweh,
right.
But Sweh's not actually your name.
No. My actual name is Joshua, and it's a nickname that I picked up years ago. I was a junior in college, and I was doing missions work in Mexico. I was living down there for a period of about 3.5 months. And so the missionaries that were down there, we all became really good friends. And Joshua in Spanish is Josue. I'm Puerto Rican. My background is Puerto Rican. And so I was going by Josue when I was down there. And so somehow, truthfully, I don't even remember how it started. Josue got shortened to Sweh, and so it's basically Joshua for short in Spanish. And then the nickname stuck. When I got back to the States, none of my friends, back in the States knew me as Sweh. Everybody knew me as Josh. And so I start telling people that I'm going by Sweh, and some of my friends that I've known for a long time are looking at me like, Sweh, what's this all about? Who is Sweh? We didn't give you this nickname, so we're not okay with it. But eventually it stuck, and everybody started calling me that. And it's kind of reached a point now where if somebody says Josh or Joshua, I don't even register, depending on who it is. Like my wife still calls me Josh.
Yeah, Allison will not call you Sweh.
Well, it depends on the mood. Like sometimes she'll call me Sweh depending on who we're around. She never calls me that when we're by ourselves. And the funny thing about that is when Allison and I first met, I was Sweh. So she always called me Sweh we were really close friends for about 1.5 years before we got married. And the moment that she went from calling me Sweh to calling me Josh, when it was after we started dating. She started calling me Josh, and it was like, all right, it's real now. She's calling me by my real name. So
she named you because once you name something, you got to keep it.
Exactly. She named me and claimed me. So
I love it, dude. Because so many people are like, I remember when we had to write down your name in the bulletin. I'm like, okay, it's not spelled like SWAY. It's like not even close.
Yeah. So the reason why I spell it that way, SWEH, because number one, in Spanish, if you're using the proper Spanish pronunciation, it would actually be Sweh. and not Sweh. So Sweh is like the Americanized version. So it would be
The white
Sweh.
version.
And then the other reason is that Joshua, Josue in Spanish is spelled Josue. So when you shorten it to Sweh, it's Sue, Sweh. But if you write it down, people are going to think that my name is Sue.
What's up, Sue?
And I don't want people calling me Sue, so I spell it phonetically. Sweh.
So that's the story, the legend, the myth.
That's the story of Sweh.
Dude, I love it, bro. Well, hey, so since we know your name, give us the rest of the backstory, dude. Where are you from? What's your family like? Your background, all that kind of fun stuff.
Okay, so I've been instructed to keep this short because, as you all know, I have a tendency to preach a long time. I know how to do talking. That's my job, is talking. So,
and before you go, I'm pulling this up real quick because your last church service at the after church, you put up on Facebook, and you preached for a total of, my Facebook could load, that would be really wonderful. You preached for a total of, I guess that was only 15 minutes. That's not too bad. That's pretty short for Sweh. I've seen you go for an hour and a half.
Well, typically I preach, my average sermon length is about 65 minutes is my average. But after the first week that we started doing this thing on Facebook, from quarantine, and everybody's tuning into live stream, after that first week, my wife was like, listen, I feel like you need to shorten your messages while we're doing quarantine live stream, because it's much more difficult to stay engaged in something like this for an hour than it would be if you're in person, right? If you're in person, then it's easier to keep people in. But online, if you're going over an hour, a lot of people are going to have a difficulty staying locked. So during the quarantine, I've had to shorten.
And then when you're at Southside, it's even shorter because we got to shove you in that 40-minute category.
Right. I have to fit in that box. Yeah.
But yeah, we got to keep it short and sweet today, bro.
Yeah. So a little background. I grew up in South Carolina, but I do not consider myself a Southerner. I'm a Puerto Rican who happened to live in the South. And so that's why I do not have the same accent as Scott Smith. Though we both grew up in South Carolina. And I was number 2 of 4 boys. Grew up in a really, really good, strong Christian home. My dad was a youth pastor at one point when I was growing up. He was involved in church planting and church leadership. I was the rebel of the family, and I was the last one to really come to faith, and that didn't happen for me until I was a senior in high school. And then it wasn't until a year after that I kind of, received the call into ministry. And I didn't know what that looked like at that point, and it wouldn't be years later until I would figure out what it looked like to be called into ministry. But most of the time that I was growing up, it was kind of a casual agnosticism, and I've always been a natural skeptic, and so I didn't really see the point in Christianity for a while. All I saw was hypocrisy, and that really kind of turned me off and made me think I really don't want to be a part of this. And so I just kind of played the church game for my dad's benefit. I didn't want any bad press on my dad because of me. So my plan was, I'm just going to play the church game until I graduate high school, and when I move out on my own, I'll be able to move out of church as well. And I distinctly remember a moment when I was being baptized at the age of 13, and I was doing this again for good press for my dad. And the head pastor of the church was baptizing me. And I remember standing there in the baptismal pool, lying through my teeth, telling the people in the church that I had been saved, and thinking to myself, I don't know if there's a God, but if there is, I know this is really going to make him angry. So I hope that lightning doesn't strike me right now, because this would be quite a way to go. And lightning didn't strike, and God still loved me. And when I was a senior, I couldn't deny that even though there were so many hypocrites, my dad and my mom lived out their faith in front of me every single day. And not perfectly, of course, nobody does, but they were genuine, they were real. And eventually I just couldn't deny the truth of their life change. And so I started to believe in God, but it wasn't until a year after that I really kind of hit rock bottom, as far as a 17-year-old can hit rock bottom, at the end of a really, really destructive, damaging relationship. And at that point, I just said, all right, Lord, I'm taking my hands off. This is what happens when I try to run my own life. So from now on, I'm all yours. And that's when I came to faith genuinely in Christ. Then I went to Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. I wanted nothing more than to go to Notre Dame. That was my only plan. I'd grown up obsessed with Notre Dame. It was the only place I wanted to go. I didn't apply to any other schools. And then when I got the rejection letter from Notre Dame, I was crushed again and came up with a new plan. And that was, I'll just go to a Christian school for a year and I'll transfer to Notre Dame. So I just Googled Christian college and got 10,000 hits.
Right. Yep.
And so I had to narrow it down, and I thought, well, maybe if I do the student athlete deal, that'll help me out. And my best sport at the time, oddly enough, was ice hockey, because as you all know, Puerto Ricans who live in South Carolina play ice hockey.
It's like Jamaicans with cool run-ins.
Yeah, exactly. So I Googled Christian school hockey team, and Liberty was the only one that came up. And so I went to Liberty with no knowledge whatsoever about the school, except that it was a Christian school with a hockey team. I got there, didn't even make the hockey team because I was too small. And my plans to transfer fell through. I couldn't pass math classes to save my life. And so I was stuck there. And the Lord really used that time to shape me a lot. I ended up staying there to get my master's degrees. From there, I went to a town about 2 hours away to get my first job as a youth pastor and a college pastor. And that's another long story that led me here. So that's kind of the story of me in 5 minutes or less.
And when you came to South Bend, Michiana area, you came as specifically a church planner. I mean, that's kind of why you I wouldn't say uprooted. You got uprooted, let's just be honest. But then you parachuted into South Bend with your wife. I remember when you and I met, it was kind of like an instant connection. And then we became friends with you guys right off the bat. But that was it. Y'all know, I mean, you guys literally knew nobody when you guys landed in South Bend.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't know soul. And we'd gotten recommended for the position here from a mutual friend of a professor that I had at Liberty. So it was, just a crazy God thing that the door even opened for us to be here. So when we first moved, I immediately started in college ministry. The first phone call that I got inviting me up here was about the Baptist Collegiate ministry. And Pastor Scott was on the team that called me in order to interview me for the Baptist Collegiate ministry position. So we moved up here. It was the first week of October, almost 6 years ago now. And I immediately started on campus. And I also, at that point, was also starting the long evaluation process and application process to be a church planter through the North American Mission Board. And that process lasted about 2 years. So in those first 2 years, I was doing, the Baptist Collegiate ministry thing and working a lousy dead-end job and just trying to make ends meet. So we, like you said, we didn't know anybody, and it took a while to just build some relationships. That first time that you and I met was in a pastor's meeting. So
Hacienda, I feel like it was a Hacienda.
It was at a Mexican restaurant at Hacienda, and there was a group of pastors, and I walked in. I wasn't on time. I walked in, and the rest of the association pastors were already seated. And so I walked up to the hostess, and she was like, "Hey, do you need a table?" And I was like, "Oh, my party's already here." And she goes, "Okay, what's the name of the party?" And I go, "Actually, I'm not sure. But is there somewhere where there's a table with a bunch of white dudes wearing polo shirts?" And she laughed and she was like, "Yeah, I know exactly what you're looking for. I'll take you over there." So she takes me into the room where all the pastors were. And I sit down and I locked eyes with you, Marc. And I was like, it's somebody that I can relate with. And so
I had my fro back then.
Yeah, it was. I always stick out like a sore thumb in pastors' meetings because I'm not your standard look on a pastor. So we just hit it off right away, and so that was you were my first real friend here. So we go way back now.
We do 6 years, bro. So let me chase that rabbit down the trail a little bit. So you flew in, landed, started collegiate ministry, church plant life. You already mentioned it. You're working a job, trying to get collegiate ministry started, eventually start doing a church planning. This is more, I think, would be good for our church to understand, because a lot of our church don't quite understand bivocational pastors and what that means and the stress and the grind. So what is it like to be a bivocational church planner? And I'll even throw the Baptist Collegiate Ministry in there too.
It is busy. It is very, very busy. So the thing about bivocational is when I first moved here, I was coming from a full-time pastorate. So that was my one job was to be a youth and college pastor. And so bivocational was something that I was completely unfamiliar with and really was against there in the beginning, because I wanted to focus on real ministry. And I thought, I'm wasting my time working a job out in the workforce when I really am called to ministry, and that's what I need to be doing instead. And so I had a bitterness at the very beginning, working, a normal 9 to 5. And even after I started working at Notre Dame, which absolutely changed everything for me, because I'm finally in a place where I've wanted to be my whole life. Even at the beginning, working a job there on campus, it was still like, okay, this is just really temporary. I don't really want to be doing this. I want to be doing something else. But it took a while for the Lord to teach me, because I'm hard-headed, that working a normal job became a mission field, still is a mission field. I get to spend every single day with lost people. I get to spend every single day around normal people in a context that I wouldn't be able to if I was just a pastor. And so I've gained a new appreciation for bivocational ministry, because now I'm doing ministry in a church context and I'm doing ministry in a work context, which really fuels part of the vision of our church. You can't see it probably on screen, but the motto of the After Church is the mission starts after church. And so what we're trying to push and train our people into is that what's really important is what happens after you leave the building. The gathering is essential. The gathering is important. But then when you leave and you go to work on Monday, you go to school on Monday, it's your calling to be the church there. And you have to be the one who's being the gospel hands and feet of Jesus there, because your pastor can't be. The staff at your church can't reach the people in your job, because you're called to do that. And so it's been really great that I've had that experience, because I'm preaching that to them, not from an ivory tower, but from experience, and saying, I'm doing this too every single day. I'm going to work tomorrow just like you are. And so we're in this together. But it's not without its fair share of challenges. It's a lot of hours. My normal job is a base of about 50 to 60 hours a week. And that's if there's no special events. And on weeks where there are special events, then I'm, working upwards of 60 to 70 hours, sometimes more. And so that makes some really difficult challenges as far as traditional ministry goes, because my schedule doesn't allow me to, lead a Wednesday night small group, for example, or even participate in a Wednesday night small group, because at my job, I work second shift. So I go into work every day at 3 and I'm working till 1 o'clock in the morning. So evening activities, which are kind of the lifeblood of a lot of churches in terms of, small group and discipleship and outreach things, I just simply can't do. And so that's added a lot of difficulty to try to figure out, okay, how do we do this well? And truthfully, I'm still trying to figure that out. I haven't cracked that code perfectly yet, or even close, but I have an appreciation for bivocational ministry, and it's not something that I dread anymore. It's something that I'm enjoying, and part of it is, of course, because I love my job at Notre Dame. But and of course, when I say all this, this is not in any way, shape, or form to speak badly of those who have the privilege of being in full-time ministry. Being in full-time ministry is still a goal of mine. I still eventually want to get there once we're able to sustain that in our church. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying it, man. I'm trying to make the most of it.
Now, have you guys been able to see a lot of good wins with the church plant? I know it's a grind. You've been grinding for 6 years, and a lot of times church planters kind of get stuck in the bad times, because church plants, you ain't got no money. You start with no people. You don't have infrastructure. You're trying to build this whole thing up, and it's exhausting. And I know for even you and for Allie, I mean, you guys are exhausted because it's not just you working. I mean, she's grinding too and trying to take care of the kids. But are there any good wins so far that have come out of this church plant?
No, not a single one. It's been all terrible.
Great interview, bro. Great interview.
The interview. Thanks for coming. See you guys later. No, there have been a number of wins, man. And you're absolutely correct in saying that it's really a long process of building. And the way that I've said it before is it's kind of like you're building a ship. And before the ship is even close to being done, you're already pushing off into the ocean. And so you've got this unfinished boat that you're starting a journey with, that you're still building up, and you're also trying to convince people to get on board and tell them it's a really good idea for you to get on the ship that's not finished yet. All aboard. We don't have all the pieces and it might sink, but come on, let's go take a journey together. So it's definitely a weird challenge. And we're, still trying to build some of those pieces there. It took a while for example, a children's ministry. Our church didn't begin with a children's ministry, in part because we didn't know anybody. And so whereas a lot of church plants are starting with an established team and a really well-established relationship with a mother church, it was just the two of us and our two kids. And so when you go online, for example, and you find Facebook posts on forums of people saying, hey, I'm looking for a church. I just moved into the area. Any recommendations? And of course, you've got a bunch of people saying, hey, come to my church, come to my church. But what's funny is that so many of these people are looking for, what we're really looking for is we want a really great children's ministry, a really great youth ministry, a really great XYZ ministry. And you'll get these people who say, oh, come to my church. We have a giant swirly slide that goes from the sanctuary into the kids area that's all stocked like a McDonald's play place.
That'd be pretty dope, though.
Like, I mean, we have a living room and there's our two kids and that's it, So there's not a lot of, great ways to market something like that. And so one of the wins that we've celebrated in the last year and a half, especially, is having some young families that have joined our church who their mindset has been bigger than we want to go to a church that serves us. Their mindset was, we want to be a part of building something. And so having those families join has been awesome. It's been huge. And in the last year and a half, our children's ministry went from being just our two kids to being over a dozen, almost just like that, with a number of families joining, which my kids have loved, obviously, because now they look forward to going to church and seeing all their friends there. Whereas before, whenever we would have church, they'd be like, oh my gosh, it's church day. This is so boring. We don't have anything to do. There's no kids. So now they love that. So for our family, that's been one of the biggest wins that we've celebrated. We've been able to baptize a few folks over the last few years, and that's obviously the biggest win that a church can have, is seeing people come to Christ. And one of the other wins that we've had thus far is surviving. Just being honest, that's a win in and of itself, because the number of church plants that start, but then are pretty much done or quit within the first 5 years is a lot higher than you would think. And so there have been, like I talked about, a lot of obstacles in our path, and just the fact that we're still going is a win. So
let me ask you this, because I know a lot of what you do with the after church is in connection to what you do with Baptist Collegiate Ministry. How have you seen the after church be an extra, I'm just going to say another weapon, another tool in your tool belt to be able to reach out to these college kids?
So when I first started this, the after church and the Baptist Collegiate Ministry were two separate things, not connected at all. And so one of the things that happened probably 2 years in was I really saw the need to connect these two things, and that both could be more effective if they were in conjunction with each other. And one of the things that I emphasize so much in our college ministry when I'm doing Bible studies on campus is trying to get students to understand that a campus Bible study is important. It is a really great way to connect with other believers on campus. It's a really great way to evangelize. It's a really great way to be encouraged in your faith. It has a lot of great benefits, but it's not church, and it doesn't replace membership and involvement and participation in the local church. And so training students to understand that these two things are not the same, that they work in conjunction, was one of the things that I really pushed a lot and still push a lot. Because imagine all you have is your collegiate ministry. When you graduate and you're no longer in college, and that's been your church for 4 years, you graduate and you have nothing. You have nowhere to go, because there is no church that looks like a college ministry. There is no church that's just college students and meets on campus and does the things that a collegiate ministry does. And with a collegiate ministry, with a Bible study of any kind, really, you go, you participate, and you leave. And that's kind of it. Whereas being involved as an active participating member in a church involves so much more. And so training our students to understand that and then connecting them into church has been another really huge win. And I joked at one point that BCM, which stands for Baptist Collegiate Ministry, I joked at one point that BCM should also stand for Better Church Members. So we're trying to train college students to be better church members so that when they graduate, they're going to leave Notre Dame and IUSB, and they're going to join a church somewhere, and there's going to be a pastor who is so excited to have them as members in their church because of how we're trying to train them to be productive church members here. So we connected those two. A good number of our students in our campus Bible studies are also attending our church. Not all of them, but I'd say probably most of them are attending our church. And that's been a really great thing for our church, because college students are awesome for really energetic service. You know, college students have fewer familial responsibilities. College students have a lot of energy. College students are very excited. There's a lot of life with college students. But you can't build a church totally on college students. If for no other reason, then you will die from lack of tithes.
Yep. They ain't got jobs. They're paying to get educated.
Exactly. College students have a lot of things. Disposable income is not one of them. What's that?
I said, in debt is one of those things they have.
Yeah, debt is one of those things. So college students can't be your backbone, but college students can be your muscle. And so our college students have added a lot of muscle into our church and a lot of, vibrancy and excitement. And so it's essential that we've joined those two things together in the last few years.
So talk about this a little bit. What are some of the connections that you personally have made on Notre Dame's campus with the college students, as well as what you've seen the reach BCM has had?
So when we first started at Notre Dame, and I don't want to leave IUSB out either, because I love my kids there too.
Well, let's be honest, you and me, we Notre Dame fans though, bro. So that's just what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. my wife was like, don't treat IUSB like a redheaded stepchild. And I was like, I'm not. I love IUSB too. But when we first started on campus at Notre Dame, there was only one student in our group. And so for a while, it was just me and him, this guy named Ryan. And every so often, we'd have another girl named Emily. I'd say she was semi-regular. So it was me and Ryan for a while. Every so often, we'd have this one other kid. So there was three of us. Then Emily and this other kid graduated, and it was just me and Ryan. And we were looking at each other like, okay, now what? Well, then this other kid came in. His name was Dante. And then Ryan graduated, and it was just me and Dante. And for a long time, it was just me and Dante, like a whole semester and a half, almost a full school year. It was me and Dante. And every week, man, this kid was faithful. He was there. He never quit on me. And God only knows what would have happened if he had said, this isn't worth it. I'm not into this. But he faithfully came. And so we'd come together. We'd have some Bible study. Sometimes he would sit down and I'd look at him and be like, all right, let's just pray, man. Let's pray that God will start to do something here. And so he started putting some flyers up. And one evening, these two girls showed up. And one of them was a student at St. Mary's, and she brought her sister, who's a student at St. Mary's. And they walk in, and they're like, we're here for BCM. And Dante and I were so excited that there were other people.
You doubled the attendance, bro.
I know. Our attendance went through the roof that night. And we were so excited, but we didn't want to scare them off with how excited we were. But it's people. Yeah, come, stay, enjoy. And they ended up staying and enjoying. Both of them are still members at our church now, both the sisters. And so then little by little, one became two became four became eight. And just slowly but surely connections were made to where now we have a really vibrant small group of students. And it's been really cool to just, build relationships with these kids that are from all over the place. And then last year, I was privileged to be able to meet one of the football players, and through him to become involved in a weekly Bible study with the football team, which has, obviously as a Notre Dame fanatic, been the highlight of my life. Is
not your marriage, not your kids.
Well, I mean, obviously them. I'm not
ministry life.
That,
ministry life.
Yeah, in terms of ministry life, like it's been, who would have ever thought, 10 years ago that I would be involved in a weekly Bible study with the Notre Dame football team? Like, if you'd have told me that 10 years ago, I'd have lost my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been an incredible connection, and being able to help disciple those young men and be a part of mentoring and shaping these, leaders who have the highest platform on campus. There's no one at Notre Dame that is more highly regarded or respected or, venerated than the football players. So that's been one of the coolest connections that I've been able to experience. But also learning that they're just college students like everybody else. And at the core of who they are, they're no different than any of the other kids in my weekly Bible study. They just happen to be really
6'5", 350 pounds of pure muscle.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And then you've been able to get involved with some of the coaches too, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've been able to build relationships with some of the coaches, and be a part of mentoring and discipling even in that regard. And that, of course, has been an incredible privilege, and a really great encouragement to see that there are men who are leading this football team who care more about X's and O's. They care about the spiritual formation of the young men on the team. And man, if I wasn't a Notre Dame fan before, I would have become a Notre Dame fan just simply because of that you have these guys who love Jesus and are trying to teach their players to love Jesus. That's that's better than anything that happens on the field.
And then you get to come alongside them and help instill those values as well. I mean, I remember you telling me the story of when the players do their walk. Well, the walk isn't from the Golden Dome to the stadium anymore, is it?
No, so the player walk used to be every Saturday, you know, on game day as the players are making their way into the stadium. It used to be that they would start at the Basilica, they would go to Mass.
Okay.
And so all of the fans would line up on the sidewalks, and the players would come by and give high fives and stuff. Now the player walk starts in the Guglielmino Athletics facility. So the team is all there, and then they file towards the stadium for the player walk. So,
but you got players running up to you being like, "What's up, Sweh?" Like,
yeah. It was, I was able to do, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to be on game day for the player walk until one of the last games of the season last year. And so it was the first time that I'd done the player walk, with, you know, having had relationships with players before. And, the player walk was one of my favorite things as a kid, because we'd stand there and all these famous football players are walking by and you're just hoping to get a high five. And when I went to the player walk this past season, I had a couple of friends with me. And so I'm standing there, and I don't know, probably 3/4 of the team was like, "Sweh, what's up, man?" And came up giving me hugs. And my friends are just standing there looking at me like, what is even going on here? Like, who is this guy? So it was a really, really cool day.
The day you'll never forget.
No,
but
never forget that.
Let me ask you this, man, as we're winding down a little bit. So, putting the two together, the church plant and the collegiate ministry at both campuses, what do you hope to see happen? Like, not, I guess for lack of a better word, what vision do you have for these ministries going forward?
Well, establishing a solid foundation is really one of them, because like I said, we're still kind of building the boat, so to speak. So getting to a point where we can stand on our own 2 feet as a church is one of the biggest things that I'm working towards. And of course, ministry is always going to be a grind. There's never going to be a time when you've arrived. But there hopefully will come a time when we're not doing all that we can to just survive. You know what I mean? And so I'm really looking forward to the day when we can really focus more on expansion more than we are on just survival, you know, and doing the best with the little that we have. And on the Notre Dame side, on campus, you know, my vision is that eventually our ministry goes just from being a small group Bible study to being something that is affecting the entire campus. I really hope for the day when a student graduates from Notre Dame and they look back on their experience of their 4 years on campus, one of the things that they remember is what BCM did. Whether they were a part of our group or not, I want it to be something that is on everyone's radar. I want it to be where every student on campus knows, oh, that's BCM. That's the BCM kids. And when that happens, man, what's going to happen is we're going to be training up and discipling leaders that go out across the world to become the industry leaders in their fields. These kids that graduate from Notre Dame are going to be the CEOs. They're going to be the ones who are the entrepreneurs. They're going to be the business owners and the lawyers and the politicians. Notre Dame churns out world changers every single year. I want it to be that we start churning out world changers for the kingdom. And so, again, working in conjunction with the church, not only will they be world changers personally, they'll also be world changers as church members. And so they'll be a part of their churches in whatever communities that they're in, where their jobs take them, that turn into greater impact for the kingdom in their local bodies, wherever they are. There was a quote by the SBC president, J.D. Greer, who said that success in a church shouldn't be determined by its seating capacity, but rather by its sending capacity. Mm-hmm. And where so much focus is on building the numbers within and trying to get as large as you possibly can, real ministry, real impact in ministry for the kingdom is more about all of the leadership and discipleship that you send out into the harvest. So rather than gathering in so much, it's sending out. And so my hope and my vision is eventually to be a discipleship headquarters that sends people out across the world. And in Mishawaka and South Bend, that we gather on Sundays, and then we send people out across our community, into their homes, into their workplaces, into their classrooms, into their social circles, with the mindset that the mission starts after church, and that we've been encouraged and equipped to go and live out the gospel every single day.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned Notre Dame, and I know we joked about it, but we don't want to forget about IUSB. I know that's been a struggle because it's a local community commuter school, so it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
What do you hope to see from IUSB? I mean, obviously, same exact thing, but
right, yeah, platform. Same exact things there. IUSB is kind of a different animal because as a commuter school, when you have a Bible study that meets on a Thursday evening, almost everyone that goes to IUSB is now home. Whereas at Notre Dame, all the students are on campus, or most of them at least, and there's a very vibrant, social life on campus. At a place like IUSB, every student club, not just ours, but every student club has that same difficult obstacle of most students that go to this school show up on campus to go to class, and then they leave. And so we're really still trying to figure out how exactly to navigate those waters. And so my hope for the ministry there is to figure out how exactly to build more of a vibrant community, and to grow in such a way that we begin to impact the students that are showing up and then leaving right away.
No, that's cool, dude. That's cool. Well, hey, for you guys, if you stuck along this interview to this point, we congratulate you guys for going the marathon with us. In case you didn't know, Sweh does have a lot of support through the various networks that we have with the NCIBA, the North Central Indiana Baptist Association, which is a long, fancy word for the churches right here in like St. Joe County and down in Warsaw, this little area as well. I know we do a lot of support with that. For collegiate ministry, you're part of the North American Mission Board. But just being clear, do you still receive funding from the North American Mission Board as a church plant?
No, the funding from the North American Mission Board was only to the first 3 years. Okay. So, and that was on a tiered, drop down level. So our support was most in year 1, and then less in year 2, least in year 3, and then we've run past that course. We do still receive monthly support from NCIBA, and that's something that I'm so thankful for that Southside is a part of, because if you're a Southside member that is tithing, and hopefully you are, if you're not a tithing member at Southside, if you go to Southside and aren't tithing, start tithing, okay? I can say that because I'm only a sometimes pastor at Southside, and I can't get fired.
There's the truth.
Be faithful and tithe. But I'm so thankful for those tithes because Southside contributes to the associational giving, and every single month we receive support from the association that's essential for our survival. And then beyond that, our support is mainly from individuals. Individuals inside our church and a few individuals that are really great supporters even outside of our church that every month are sending offerings to really kind of keep us afloat. And so I'm incredibly thankful for those things because people don't have to do that, and yet they're choosing to, and it's turning into wins for the kingdom every single week.
I love it, man. So if there's someone here listening from Southside, obviously our ties indirectly, get to you a little bit. But if someone wanted to say, you know what, I want to step up, I want to help Sweh, I want to support BCM, the after church, I'm trying to get these college kids ready to launch, like that idea, ready to launch them out into the world. How can they financially support you? Like, where would they go?
So if you go to our website, which is just simply theafterchurch.com, go to our website, and there is a tab that says giving, and you can sign up to give online. You could do it in a one-time gift or a recurring gift. If you want to, even before taking that step, just talk a little bit more about supporting us, feel free to contact me. You can send me a message on Facebook, and I'd love to have that conversation with you. But you can find that on our website, and we are in the process right now of trying to build and launch the After Church app, which you can
really. Oh,
yeah,
I didn't even know that one.
Yeah, that's something that this quarantine is, trying to push us towards is building an app. I have no date as to when that will be ready, but it's in the works. And once that is complete, then you'll be able to download the app and give on the app. But right now, at our website, theafterchurch.com.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, Sweh, I appreciate you a lot, bro. I mean, a lot of people, they might guess it, they might not know it, but dude, you're one of my closest friends, so I appreciate the grind for the kingdom, bro. I know we don't build it, we don't build the kingdom. God builds it, but we're called to go out and be the hands and feet and mouthpieces of Jesus, and you're doing it, bro. So thanks for grinding for it, man.
Dude, thanks for having me. Thanks for the friendship. It's something I need, and church planting can be a very lonely thing, and so I'm incredibly thankful for friends like you who have helped me to get through this and keep me sane, not pull my beard hair out.
We could shave it.
I could, but I feel like there's something missing then.
Nah, I mean, people are shaving their beards and hairs and getting themselves bangs and dying in quarantine life, but
yeah, not me.
Nope, not Sweh. But hey, Sweh, again, thank you for joining us. If you've gotten to us this far, you have joined us for episode 3 of Zoom Calls with Marc. We still have the kids ministry conversation, the women's ministry conversation, the outreach conversation happening hopefully over the next couple weeks. But until then, we just want to say thanks again for joining. And Sweh, it was a pleasure again, man.
Thanks.
Take it easy, bro.